If you're in the market for a mid-size European-built SUV, then you're spoiled for choice. There's great cars from the UK, Germany, Austria, even the Ford Escape is made in Spain. It's awesome. And from Italy, there's this, the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Veloce. The Stelvio is a bit of a rare bird. You don't see many of them out there, but with these good looks, it certainly is a head-turner. Starting at the front here, we've got the signature Alfa Romeo grille and a left-of-centre number plate with these LEDs that look good, but they don't really do anything too fancy. And it looks really good in profile too, with these sleek lines. It looks a lot less boxy than some of its German rivals. The standard wheels on the Veloce model are these good-looking 20-inch black alloys. At the back, the design gets a little bit more coupe-like. To me, it reminds me a little bit of Mercedes-Benz or maybe even Porsche. I think it's really attractive. These rear light clusters also reflect the ones that we see at the front. We've got two large exhausts down there which look amazing but don't really quite make the same sort of sound that their look implies. Underneath the powered tailgate, we've got a 525-litre boot which expands to 1,600 litres with the rear seats down. A cargo blind, a pretty flat floor which hides the space saver spare underneath it, and we've got these rails here for the tethers which hold down the cargo net in the back. All Stelvios get the same engine, a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged unit, and this range-topping Veloce model gets the highest output with 206 kilowatts of power and 400 newton meters of torque, 0 to 100 in 5.7 seconds, which for a 1.6-tonne SUV is pretty quick. The interior of the Alfa Romeo, I think, feels more authentically Italian than its stablemate Maserati, which to me looks a little bit more American. Here we've got oceans of leather with stitching and soft touch plastics and aluminium accents. It's a very pleasant place to be. Starting with the center console screen, it's 8.8 inches. It sits in the dash, which I really like. It's not perched up on top. It has all of the functionality you could possibly want, well, except for maybe wireless Apple CarPlay, but I'm willing to forgive that. But it is maddeningly slow to use. It is really laggy and it just ruins the entire user experience. It's also really slow to connect to your phone's Bluetooth. So when you first turn the car on and the radio's on by default, it'll get halfway through a song and then suddenly your phone's Bluetooth will kick in and cut it off. It's just not a great user experience. Despite being quite slow and laggy to use, there is a lot of functionality available through this center console screen. There's a whole bunch of widgets here on the home page which you can scroll through and personalize what you see while you're driving. So you can get right into the vehicle information, the performance of the car, navigation on here, as well as climate control and driver assistance. Climate control's pretty easy to use. They work in conjunction with the center console screen. Then we've got a single USB and a 12-volt outlet beneath that. A big lid here covering two big American-sized cup holders. Very handy to use. And then we've got a gear shifter here from the Fiat Chrysler parts bin, because we've also seen this same one in the Maserati, and a little Italian flag just underneath that, which my daughter spotted and said, "Why is that in here?" And I said, "That's because this car was made in Italy." This whole section here is covered in a very nice textured aluminium. It's got a good feel to it, a jog wheel to control the center console screen, which also operates by touch. Underneath the armrest, we've got wireless phone charging, a not very big bin, another 12-volt outlet, USB-A and USB-C outputs, nice leather stitching here on the armrest. The instrument cluster is another hybrid analog digital unit. I really like the font Alfa Romeo have used on the analog dials here. They just have a nice sort of racing feel to them. The center screen doesn't show you a huge amount of trip and car information. Most of that is handled through the center screen, and the apps that do that actually work quite well. The steering wheel reminds me very much of the ones that we've seen in Audi S-Line models. It's about the same size as that and has the same sort of thin sort of feel to it. It's leather wrapped with stitching and has a flat bottom, plus the engine stop start button is on here. I wish it was red rather than black. Plus there's cruise controls and the audio system controls. Two very big gear shifters back here which have a great feel to them, and they make a nice clicky sound when you change gears. But the good thing about them being so big, of course, is that you can quite easily access them when you're turning the wheel. Visibility out the front is pretty good. I can see all the way to the front of the bonnet pretty much. Not so good in the rear vision mirror just because the rear windscreen is quite small and it's raked at a pretty steep angle. But there are big rear vision mirrors here on the side, and they have blind spot monitoring too, which really helps out because there's not great visibility because of the high sills on the back doors when you turn your head. The seats are really comfortable. They're upholstered in a very nice soft leather. There's stitching and also they're perforated, plus there's full electric adjustment. And the headrests especially are very soft. So if you were to have a little nap in your car, not while you're driving of course, you would be very comfortable here in the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. The back seat of the Stelvio, and look, it's similar to how I remember the Audi Q5 being. It's not huge, but it's passable. I mean, for somebody as tall as me anyway, I'm 190 centimeters tall, so I'm not exactly short. But my knees are touching the seat in front, but not too hard. I mean, there's a plastic shell here which makes it a little less comfortable. Plenty of foot room though, which is good, but not a huge amount of headroom because of that sloping roof. Great view out of the panoramic sunroof, of course. The sky looks great through that. We've got two air vents back here, which are the same as the front. They look kind of like eyes, as my kids were saying the other day. Two USB ports down the bottom there, and also seat heating controls for the rear seats. We get an armrest with cup holders, and the headrests are not as soft as the ones in the front. So yeah, all up, it's not too bad in the back. Around town, and the Stelvio is very pleasant to drive. It feels a little smaller than it actually is, which is not a bad thing. The driving dynamics are really good, and it's a very comfortable, easy car to drive. I could quite happily live with this. And another reason I know it's good is the fact that both my wife and children have said that they really like this car. There's 3 drive modes labelled DNA. D, dynamic, N for normal, A, I'm actually not sure what that stands for. I'm gonna have to look that one up. From a refinement point of view out here on the open road, look, it's not too bad. There's a bit of wind noise and I'm getting a little bit of road noise, although this is a noisy stretch of freeway. But all up, it's fairly quiet. Not quite as quiet as a German car though. These paddle shifters are just almost comically big, but they do have a fantastic feel to them. So let's do a bit of downshifting here as we exit off the freeway. Very quick changes. 0 to 100 in the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Veloce is officially 5.7 seconds. So we should really see what that looks and feels like. D mode for dynamic. Here we go. That was pretty good. I like that. There's a little bit of a whistling kind of noise from the engine as it spools up there that actually almost sounds like a police siren, and I thought, hang on. But I do think that this car's look doesn't quite match its engine note in that it looks a lot louder and aggressive than it actually sounds or performs. All right, let's try the adaptive cruise control. Most cars have these controls on the right-hand side of the steering wheel, but here it's on the left. But that's okay, we'll make it work. Doing a lot of button mashing here, and oh, no, there we go, okay. We've got the steering assist on as well, so let's just see how that goes around this bend here. It's pretty good. It's actually keeping me a little more centered than some other systems I've used. Getting a little uncomfortably close to the left-hand side of the lane here, especially while I've got another car next to me. Well, changing lanes into some traffic and it just sort of slammed the brakes on there, which kind of upset the car behind me, but sorry. Traffic jam assist disengaged, highway assist engaged. Okay, now we're suddenly accelerating again. It is a little bit weird until you get used to it, and of course, virtually every new car has these systems, and a lot of people just don't use them because they're too scared to, or they don't trust them, or maybe they just haven't pushed those buttons. And look, when you've been driving your entire life the old-fashioned manual way, to suddenly hand control over to a computer system in your car is a little bit weird. I think that the one thing that these systems don't quite have is the same smoothness that a human has. So in this situation where we're in sort of, medium density traffic on a highway, people are changing lanes in front of me all the time and speeding up and slowing down, the car does tend to overreact and really slam on the brakes. Thank you. And then speed up quite dramatically when it thinks that it's all clear. The radar system is very good, but it just lacks the finesse that a human brings to it. I love the panoramic sunroof. I know it's not the safest thing to be driving around looking through the ceiling, but especially when you're driving through the city, those tall buildings, it does catch your eye. I think I want to be a passenger in this car. These indicators are actually quite annoying. They don't click down into position when you use them, they just sort of bounce straight back. So depending on how hard you push it down, that depends on whether or not it's just going to flash for 3 flashes to indicate that you're changing lanes, or it's going to stay on to indicate that you're turning around a corner. And it's very easy to get it wrong, and I find myself constantly having to push it back up, and then you put it on the other side accidentally, and it's annoying. Starting at 88 grand, the Alfa Romeo Stelvio Veloce is competitively priced and it looks really good. And the fact that there's not too many of them on the road really does help it stand out in the morning drop-off in the line of BMWs and Audis. But it does lack some of that cutting-edge tech that you find in those squarer-looking German rivals. If only someone could make a car that combined that tech with these good looks, then I'd be a customer.